Hi there, this is Dara here from Nurture, and in this subject specific tutorial I'm going to give you some examples on how you can create a really effective check for understanding session in Nurture Signal for HASS subjects. Now in this video I'm going to cover a geography example and an English example, but all of these principles will apply across whether you're using it for history or any other social sciences subject as well. Okay, now first off, I'm going to cover the geography version, okay? Now, once again, like I said, we're checking for understanding here. So that means that we're doing this as a live quiz. Now, this is an activity I intend to do in class, hence why it's a live quiz. If it's something that you just want to run as like an out of class activity, I would use the assessment session type instead. But for now, we're going to proceed with live quiz. And in this example, for this geography example, let's say I'm about to teach a class on water in the world. Okay, so what I've entered in here in this prompt is, and being very clear what year group this is. This is year 7. This is the subject, it's geography, and this is the main topic that I'm covering. I'm expecting maybe 26 students in the class of mixed ability. I have my learning intention for the overall lesson here. And then I have the subtopics that I'm hoping to cover throughout the lesson. So these are the individual little topics as part of the lesson that I'm hoping to cover. So for example, the water cycle is a continuous system, where the water actually is, and water scarcity. Okay. Now this is just a very basic lesson overview or lesson plan, but the more detail you can include here about the lesson you're intending to teach, the more specific we can questions we can generate for you in terms of the hinge questions we create. So in this case, I wanted to create 3 questions for me. So that means that throughout the lesson, I'm hoping to release about 3 questions to my students to check for their understanding as the lesson goes. I'm going to prepare this for later, and I'm not going to adjust any of these settings in here. I've covered them in other tutorials. For now, I'll just click next. And what this is going to do is it's going to take my lesson plan and it's going to generate 3 effective hinge questions for me, okay? Now, let's go back to what a hinge question is. A hinge question is a multiple choice question that has maybe 1 correct answer or more than 1 correct answer, but the incorrect answers are a diagnostic into the student's thinking. So they're not questions that are trying to catch students out, but the wrong answers do have some certain misconceptions in them that help to identify a student's thinking as to why they didn't select the correct answer. For more information about hinge questions, I'd highly recommend you go to course 3 in Nurture Learn, where we cover everything to do with checking for understanding and hinge questions. Okay. And as we can see, it has generated 3 questions for me. The first one of which is, which process in the water cycle involves liquid water turning into water vapor directly from the leaves of vegetation? We have 1 correct answer here. And in the explanation under here, I just want to call out that all of the explanations we generate will give an explanation as to why the correct answer is the correct one, but it'll also talk about why the incorrect one, so in this case here, evaporation from oceans, is incorrect because it refers to water turning into vapor from open bodies of water rather than plants. We're essentially calling out what the misconceptions could be, so that if a student selects one of those answers in the middle of the class, we can give that explanation to the student so that we can give them live feedback that helps them understand why they had a bit of a misunderstanding with it. Okay. Now, in all of these options, by default, it will most likely go to a single answer question. So what I mean by single answer is a question where there's only 1 correct answer. But we can tweak these questions around if we want to, okay? So there's a lot of different things we can do here. So let's say with this one, I actually want there to be more than 1 correct answer. So this would be extended differentiation, is a technique we might use when there might be 1 very clear, obvious answer, but maybe there might be a second answer that could be on top of that. And that can help you identify the students that are at a higher level. If they can acknowledge that both the right answers are right answers, then that usually separates them a little bit. So in order to do that, I would just click multiple here, and I would just say add more than 1 correct answer. And when I click rewrite, it's going to rewrite this question with more than one answer. So we can see here that we now have 2 correct answers, and this generates a new answer explanation for me. Okay. Now, if let's say the questions maybe are not difficult enough or they're too difficult, we can also do that here. So however you want to adjust the questions, you can just ask it in here. So I just say, this question is too difficult for the group. Just click rewrite and it should generate a fresh new question. That might be a little bit easier. Now in this case it has reverted back to where it's just a single answer question, but that is okay. So I discard those changes for now. If I want to add more questions, I can always add new ones, and I can get it to generate multiple if I want to as well. And as well, if I don't want to use a multiple choice question, I can generate an open answer question. Okay, now the one caveat I have with this is with open answer questions, it's much more difficult for us to be able to effectively check for understanding and give teachers a clear picture of whether they should move on, recap, or reteach. With checking for understanding questions, they are multiple choice questions because there's a clear and straightforward right answer and there's clear wrong answers, and from that you're able to quickly check what students understand the topic and what students don't. With open answer questions, it's a bit more trickier to do that. Now, you can create questions for it, but there is a bunch of extra things you need to include, and we do include them when we generate them. So that includes the success criteria for the open-ended question and also maybe a model answer. Now, this doesn't help us identify whether you should recap, move on, or reteach, but it does allow for you to give instant feedback back to students as well. Okay, now I'm not going to cover that in this video. That's going to be in a total separate tutorial where I'm going to cover different techniques on how you can write really effective open answer questions. Okay, so that is one example for geography, but in the next example then I'm going to cover what this might look like in an English subject. Now, I've just touched on it there that with open answer questions, they're not really the best use case when you want to check for understanding. And of course, with English, a lot of English assessment is subjective. You know, you're looking for students' opinions and looking for students' understanding that is fleshed out in much more wider answer than a simple multiple choice question. Okay. But with English, there's still plenty of use cases where we can run very quick checks for understanding within a class around certain topics. Okay, so in this example, I've got one here for persuasive texts. Once again, my prompt is written very similar to the last one in terms of its structure. So we've got, this is year 7 English. I'm hoping there'll be 26 students of mixed ability here. I've got the overall learning intention for the class that I'm hoping to run. And here are the individual subtopics here. Okay, so purpose and audience, so who the writer is trying to convince, identifying techniques, technique to effect. Now, of course, one thing I've left out here is the specific piece that I might be referring to here. So I would include this in your in the prompt as well. Just include the source that you're referring to. In the future, we may actually include the ability to upload sources for referring back to sources as well to make this a bit more accurate. But for now, we don't have that in place. But I'm just trying to demonstrate here how you can use this for English. Okay. Once again, I'm just going to generate 3 questions. And like in the previous example, it's going to generate those as multiple choice questions where you've got one correct answer and then multiple incorrect answers that might reveal students' thinking with regards to misconceptions. Okay, so if we look at the questions here, the first one here is: consider this sentence from an opinion piece about local parks. How can we stand by and watch our green spaces vanish? So which combination of persuasive techniques is present in the sentence? So again, I didn't put a source into the prompt, or I didn't upload a source because that feature doesn't exist yet. So in this case, it's actually going to come up with an example sentence to use. So here it's saying a rhetorical question and inclusive language. So the rhetorical question being the question itself, and the inclusive language includes how can we. So we have the explanation in here, But as I mentioned in the previous example, with all effective hinge questions, we are going to explain why the right answer is right, and also why the wrong answers are wrong, and why some, you may misconceive them to be wrong. Okay. On the next one, then, this is a writer describes a proposed community curfew as a disastrous attack on our freedom. What is the primary effect of choosing the phrase disastrous attack instead of new restriction? So again, this is a question about technique in here. And also then the third question is an advertisement for a dental product states 9 out of 10 dentists agree this is the best daily formula. Which statement best evaluates how the technique influences the reader? Okay. And once again, we've got one correct and multiple incorrect answers. Now, just like the geography example I kind of mentioned here, you can include open answer questions, which may be more relevant for English. I'm not going to cover them in this video because they don't necessarily lean towards effective checking for understanding, just like a hinge question does. But I will cover it in a separate video about how you can create somewhat effective open answer questions in order to get a better read on your class directly in the middle of a lesson. Okay, but before I finish up, again, I just want to come back to what makes effective checking for understanding. So within this is an activity you're supposed to run in class. Each time you release out a question, you hope that students can answer it in under a minute. You're only just trying to get a very quick read of your class. You're not doing a full assessment of them. Just trying to ensure that they have an understanding of what you've just taught them. And with effective multiple choice questions and nurture signal, we're actually able to give you that information because we're able to surface any misconceptions through multiple choice wrong answers, and of course see which students are selecting the right ones to tell you whether or not you should move on. So these are just two examples for HASS subjects. As I mentioned, I'll be covering other topics of signal in later on tutorials. But if you have any feedback or questions, please feel free to reach out and I'd be more than happy to help. And if you have specific examples of sessions you've run in Signal for these HASS subjects that you found really effective, let us know because we'd love to be able to feature them as well in future tutorials. Okay, see you in the